Recording. There. Of course. Oh, here we are. Yay. Hold on. And look,
What?
no notes.
Notes.
I did that.
I love you. Okay. Seriously, that's
genuine.
that's how it's supposed to look, guys. Okay, that's how it's supposed to look right there. Okay, so the name of my presentation is Trauma Informed Care, a universal framework for working with individuals who may or may not have experienced trauma. So I've called it this because I believe we've gotten to a point in our society, certainly with the current pandemic and a lot of the other world tragedies, that we can pretty much assume that all the people we see in our clinics have experienced some form of trauma. So that's what I mean by universal. Universal. So this is kind of like when HIV and AIDS initially came on the scene, we came up with universal precautions. So it's kind of similar to that. And a framework is an outline or structure that's ultimately built upon. So today we will talk about the framework, which we are calling trauma-informed care. So the next slide is a 10-minute TED Talk with Nadine Burke on adverse childhood experiences. It's excellent. Maybe some of you have seen it in orientation. I don't know. I watched it maybe 20 times. I love it. Okay. So this is a 15-minute TED Talk, and listen carefully because she explains ACEs beautifully, which stands for adverse childhood experiences. And we're discovering and have discovered for a lot of years, actually, we've known this for a really long time, that ACEs are at the root of a plethora of neurological, physiological, biological, and psychological issues. And she explains it beautifully, and it's a little bit frustrating because, like it says there, ACEs are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. That's Robert Block, former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, but still we don't really do that much about it. So here we go.
we don't engage with a person. And prior to that phrase, we want people to be served with opposite goals. So we come to the table, we were able to provide care regardless of ability. It was so cool. The typical healthcare is just a bit that with the capital numbers. We felt very started looking at trend. A lot of people be referred for PhD, attention deficit hyperactivity. But when I did a theory of physical, what I found that I couldn't make it just ADHD. Most of the things I would say I experienced such severe trauma that it was going on. Somehow I was missing something important. Now, I did my residency, I did a master's degree in foot health. And one of the things they teach you in foot health school is if you're a doctor and you see 100 kids all drink from the same well, and 98 of them develop diarrhea, you can go to bed right after for dose after dose after dose of antibiotics. Or you can walk over and say, what is in this well? So I began saying everything that I could get my hands on about how exposure to adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. And then one day, my colleague walked into my office and said, Dr. Kirk, have you seen this? In his hand was a copy of a research study called the Output. That day, my clinical practice and ultimately here. The study is something that everybody needs to know about. It was done by Dr. Vince Bellini at Kaiser and Dr. Bob at the CDC. Together, they 17,000 adults about their history of exposure to what they call adverse experiences or ACEs. Those include physical or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance abuse, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or stigma. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was they correlated ACE scores against health outcomes. Right. Now, one, ACEs are incredibly common. 67% of the population has one, and 12.6%, 1/8, has one. The second thing that they found is that the dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. So, higher the worse the health outcomes. For a person with an ACE score of 4 or more, your relative risk of unsuspected was 2.5 times that of someone or of Europe. Hepatitis was also 2.5 times. For depression, it was 4 times. For suicidality, it was 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had the lifetime risk of lung like we start. How does it work? Well, imagine you're walking in the forest and you see a bear. Immediately, hypothalamus says your pituitary sends a signal to your adrenal gland. It says, release adrenaline, cortisol. And so the first part of the count, your pupils dilate, your airways open up, and you are ready. Right up there, or right on the bear. And that is wonderful. If you're in a forest, there's a but the problem is what happens when it's night. Like this is activated over and over and over. And it goes from being adapted to maladapted to standard. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing system, developing hormonal system. The easiest way our DNA is read and scribed. So for me, this information threw my brain out the window because when we understand the mechanism of a disease, when we know not only which pathways are disrupted, but how, as doctors, it is our job to use the science for preventive treatment. That's what we do. So in San Francisco, we created the Center for Youth Wellness to prevent and heal the impact of the toxic. We started since we were newly treated of our kids at their regular physical. If I know that with my patient is an 844, 2.5 times of like hepatitis or COPD, she's 4.5 times as likely to become depressed, and she's 12 times as likely to attempt to take her own life as my patient. I know that when she's examined. For our patients who do screen tests, we have a multidisciplinary treatment team that works to reduce the dose of adversity and treat symptoms using best practices, including home visit, care, mental health, nutrition, holistic intervention, and yes, medication when necessary. But we also educate parents about the impact of ACEs and toxic stress the same way you would for covering electrical outlets or lead poisoning. And we tailor the care of our diabetics in a way that recognizes they may more aggressive treatment given the changes to their hormonal and immune systems. So the other thing we can understand this science is that you want to get rid of the because this isn't just an issue for kids and babies. I figured the minute everybody else heard about this, the multidisciplinary treatment teams and to the most effective clinical treatment protocol. Yeah, that did not happen. And that was a thing for me. What I had thought of simply best clinical practice now understand to be a commitment. In the words of Dr. Ross, the former president of our country, adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health experiences today. For a lot of people, their prospects, the scope and scale of the problem seems so large, it feels overwhelming to think about how to approach it. But for me, that's not the risk of life. Because when we have the right framework, when we recognize this to be a public health crisis, that we can begin to use the right toolkit to come up with solutions. From tobacco to lead poisoning to HIV, the United States has quite a strong track record with addressing public health problems. But replicating those successes with ACEs and toxic stress is going to take determination and commitment. And when I look at what our nation you for those kids in those neighborhoods, which is weird because the data doesn't bear that out. The original ACES was done to populate with 70% Caucasian, 70%. The more I talk to folks, I'm beginning to see that maybe I have it completely backwards. If I were to ask how many people in this room grew up family member suffered from mental illness, I think the years would go up. And then if I were to ask how many folks have been too much, or who really believe that if you care about it, they'll return, I bet a few more hands would go up. Even in this room, this is an issue that yet that I'm beginning to believe that we largely as the issue because it does apply to us. Maybe it's easy to see in other zip codes because we don't look at it. We'd rather be sick. Fortunately, taking advantage and frankly, economic realities make that option less viable every day. The science is clear. Earth adversity tremendous effects health across the lifetime. We are beginning to understand how to interrupt progression from early adversity to the and 30 years from now, the child who has a high score and whose behavioral symptoms go unrecognized is not connected, who goes on to develop high blood pressure, early heart or cancer, just as a normal the 6-month mortality. People look at that situation and say, what the heck? This is treatable. This is treatable. This is the important thing that we today the courage to look at the face and say, this is real and this is all of us. I believe that we are the movement. Thank you.
Bravo. Okay. So what we are going to do now is we are going to take an ACEs quiz. What do y'all think? Are you up for that? See what your score is?
Some people know they're not sharing. That helps.
Right. We're not sharing. Nobody, of course, unless you want to, but no, nobody has to share. But there is a question that I have, and you can share this question, which is, did your ACEs score surprise you? You can share that or not. Get out of here. Come on, there we go. Okay, so. Does everybody have one? Marcy, did you get one?
I passed.
Okay.
And you need one, right, Taylor?
I think, yeah, here's one.
I'll take it.
It's easy to do without a pen even, like you can just like. Only one thing.
You can do it in blood.
So we can just put the one in our mind and add as we go down.
These are my nice pens.
What keeps?
So you're getting Slack notifications.
Yeah, it's annoying.
That's all right.
Sorry about that. Are we still recording?
I think so.
I hope so.
Okay. Okay, everyone's done. So one thing about being trauma informed is recognizing that we also have trauma and being in touch with that. And, you know, first of all, recognizing it and then, you know, maybe seeking help or whatever needs to happen beyond that. But that is part of being trauma informed. And that's been said by survivors of various, you know, different places that have been where they have been, where they felt like they have been abused in some way. They felt like if the workers had been in touch with their own trauma, then maybe the experience would have been a little bit better. I didn't necessarily put this out there for you to recognize if you had trauma or not. I don't know that if this is even going to necessarily, you know, assess that, but it is surprising how many of us kind of have some of these issues, you know. So we can identify with our clients a lot more than we think we can. And if, you know, if you were maybe triggered by some of these questions, if we're going to be giving our clients this assessment, they're probably going to struggle with it too. And we are going to be in steps. I know we're going to be giving the clients this assessment. And I don't know if it's going to be exactly this one. I just got this one off the internet. I don't know exactly which one we're going to be giving them. But anyway, so would anybody like to tell us if you were surprised by your score? Did it surprise you, or did it make sense to you, or do we want to just move on from that question?
So I'll say the first time I did that. And I was actually surprised by some of the specific questions too. I think certain things, one thing that at first really stood out to me, I think we don't always see it as trauma for folks, but is number 4. It always strikes me because I think we forget that when we're working with people. Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? I think that's so common and something we often dismiss and don't look at that as a form of, can be traumatic.
Right.
So that always sticks with me. I always like to bring that up just because it's different for me. I think a lot of these other ones we think of pretty regularly, but I love that they included something like that.
Yeah.
So
It's like neglect.
yeah, but without like saying even like it felt even a little less than neglect, right?
Yeah.
Like just that
Like
support and closeness
being
in your family.
lost.
And I think
Yeah.
it's common folks feel like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything? Okay. Had any of you heard of ACEs before this presentation? Raise your hand no if you hadn't. If you hadn't heard of ACEs, raise your hand. No. Okay. So this was probably a little bit enlightening, huh? Yeah. How would understanding ACEs help one to be more compassionate, do you think, with some of the behaviors that we see in our clients? It's really helped me understand.
Well, when we were like listening to that presentation and I was going with it, I was also thinking about book that the Body Keeps Score, which I'm gonna read, but I've already started. And I just finished a section like on like childhood trauma, and I was just like shocked at how long things that don't really, I mean, I don't say not a big deal, like how long things stay with you, like literally like how your brain gets wired. And yeah, I think that like understanding that these things are, I mean, most of these are pretty obviously traumatic, but like understanding what that trauma is and like how it changes who you are at a very young age, and like getting out of those habits, like whether they're like most often like maladaptive, is like really, really difficult. So I feel like it has helped me like have more compassion for others when, especially like when it's like the same thing happening over and over again, like understanding why that is the case.
Yeah.
I think with what you said too, it made me think the rewiring of the brain is so fascinating, right? And so it helps us in understanding that. For me, one step further, and as we do the treatment with folks like this, it's a reminder that of the plasticity in the brain, and that we can rewire it back. So that's such a fascinating part of the brain to me. So having that compassion and then knowing you can be part of the new
Mhm.
rewiring, which to me is really powerful too.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to learn more about that stuff. Yeah. Like that. So was there anything that you found interesting about the research regarding ACEs? Anything else that you found interesting? I thought it was interesting that no one really cared, that nobody like recognized it. It is such a huge problem. It does seem insurmountable in a way. Yeah. Very good point. Yep. It's them, those folks.
Right?
Yeah.
For me, that goes back to like stereotyping too, and like stigma around mental health. It's like rather than facing mental health, folks rather just like it's easier to, it's more acceptable to be physically sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
A lot of people too, like this is something that's like wrapped up. It's not just like hitting your kids as a form of like punishment and like teaching them a lesson. I know for a lot of people, like that's not just like a parenting choice. That is like a fundamental part of someone's personality that they feel that is their right as a human to do. So like this language is, for a lot of people is like very new. The science behind it and like why you shouldn't do that is just very foreign because it's something that's just so deeply enrooted
Mm-hmm.
into people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it's like are you saying that like just from generation to generation to generation, the way that
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's more than cultural. It's like a I guess like a sacred privilege to do that and like understanding like how to break that
Mhm.
thought cycle is tough.
Yeah.
So interesting, I think, being able to understand the affect like just our clients, but it affects like their parent. Like I was thinking about my parents that I know of, would they be able to check off here? Then like just passion. It's also I think it's important to address like the fact that it could be genetic.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I think that is very true. I see
even if
that a
it's
lot,
better,
like,
Even if my story was better than my mother's, it's still affected.
of course. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So here's ACEs and trauma-informed care. So we're going to put the two things together. So we've talked about the widespread impact of trauma. We know about that. Maybe it's even more widespread than it's ever been, or maybe we're just recognizing it more. I don't know. I'm glad that it's, being recognized for sure. So we are recognizing the different signs. So we recognize what the physical signs are. She talked a lot about that. I've shown that to my clients before, as a way to validate their experience. And it's very helpful and very empowering for them to know, that this is not all, like, they're not crazy. You know, this isn't their fault. They were raised in an environment that, you know, kind of messed up their central nervous system. And some of this is the result of that. The physical ramifications are huge. I mean, so many people have COPD and diabetes and heart problems and everything she mentioned. You see that in our clients. It's unbelievable. It's just like, here they are. Yeah, you're right. And then of course the emotional and behavioral responses of anger and fear and anxiety and all of that stuff, sleep problems with being withdrawn. So what do? We try to help them by creating a system of support. That's one thing we can do. So here we have support systems. So many of our clients have a very limited or even toxic support system. And research shows that people who don't have a good support system don't fare as well under stress as people who do. A lot of our clients don't have many people around them, if none, no people, nobody. So we as clinicians need to help them, begin to develop some kind of a support network. And what we can do is we can maybe set them up with some professional agencies and resources that will be available to them in times of crisis. So we have 988, which was born in July of 2022. It's in its infancy still. So you don't have to dial 1-800 blah, 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 blah if you're suicidal. You just have to dial 988, thank God. Right? So that's a good thing. And then 988 is affiliated with MCOT. So if you dial 988 and you're out maybe like in the middle of, I don't know, nowhere, and you don't know where to go and you're suicidal, you're on the street, MCOT can come get you, and then they're affiliated with Huntsman. So it's all like connected. That's good to know. Yeah. And with Huntsman too. Yeah. And then the Warm Line, I don't know if you guys know about that, which is really cool. And I know one client in Plaza who uses it a lot. She loves it. It is a non-crisis mental health support system, like over the phone. It's like, I don't know, maybe like a friend or a friend with good insight, and they just kind of talk to you, chat with you, and give you, they listen and empathize and all of this great stuff. They're not open 24 hours a day, unfortunately. It's just 7 to 11. So when we tell clients about that, we need to make sure that they understand that. And they're also affiliated with HMHI. And then there's NAMI. Do y'all know what NAMI is? The National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. And it's a national, it's National Alliance, so it's national, but this is NAMI of Utah. And it's totally mentor, peer support. And then Salt Lake County Behavioral Health, I looked at that and there were some resources. And then also Jewish Family Services seems like a good place too. I don't know. Yeah, I was looking at them the other day. I was like, wow, they do a lot of good stuff too. Nonprofit. Okay, let me go back here. One more. So that's the support systems. And I know that you guys have a lot of support system knowledge, probably more than I do because I'm very new to Utah. And maybe you have that in your case manager books and stuff. Yeah. Support.
We're definitely gonna get more of like a resources.
Yeah, resources.
That the mommy's working on for us, but I'll have like numbers and everything like that.
Yeah. And I saw the numbers that you have on the board up there. Yeah. That's wonderful. So you could put the Warm Line on there. Yeah. And then the next one is we want to resist re-traumatization, of course. And this happens all the time. It's very subtle. So what is re-traumatization? Re-traumatization is a conscious or unconscious reminder of past trauma that results in a re-experiencing of the initial traumatic event. So it can be triggered by a situation. So let's say the situation is a client coming to steps. And so they're triggered by that. It's new, it's unfamiliar, they're scared, they don't know what's going to happen. And what if the person that they meet initially, whoever does the intake, and not that this would happen, but perhaps the person who's doing the intake has a bad day, is having a bad day, and they don't smile at this new client, and the client gets triggered by that. I mean, you just never know, right? So an expression or an attitude could trigger them, and then certain environments. So there are a lot of unknowns about coming into this program, depending on where our clients are coming from. Probably they're coming from environments that are probably unhealthy, but they're familiar. They know what to expect. Coming in here, I don't know. We don't know like what their background is, or what their history is, or what their experience is. It's unfamiliar. They're unfamiliar to us, and this is unfamiliar to them. So we have to be very mindful and respectful, and just very yeah.
Mind if I say something
No.
more?
Yeah.
Just add, coming into a residential program can be one of the scariest things folks do. Because it's not just treatment, you're with them there, and so making that choice to do that is huge. And most of the time, when folks come into residential, they assess whether they're going to be safe there or not within the first minutes or hour. So when we have new folks come in, it's really important for us to remember to greet them and welcome them and help them feel safe in that initial moment, because that's going to impact them truly the rest of the time. They're in, you're hyper alert at that moment, observing, especially folks with trauma. We know they are the best observers out there, right? Because they have to know how to keep safe. So how we help them in that beginning, and just honoring the choice they made to do that, I think is really powerful.
Thank you. That was great input. So what we want to do with STEPS is we really want to help people, and we don't want to re-traumatize them, because if we do, they may not trust us. They may reject services. They may leave. We may, they may have intrusive memories or nightmares or flashbacks, or, and it's hard sometimes to know what's going to be something that's going to re-traumatize someone else. And I'm sure that it happens sometimes, just unknowingly we do it. But that's why we talk about these things. And I'm going to talk more about accountability and that kind of thing just in a few slides. And how we can, help each other out with that. Okay. So 8 tips for mitigating trauma. Okay. She's so happy. The rain feels so good. Mitigating, what does that mean? Doesn't mean to stop, but it means to soften or mollify or intervene, maybe. So these are ways that we can maybe make things a little bit softer for our clients. Avoid scheduling extensive interviews. Claudia Alvarado, okay. New message in notes. Claudia had to make her entrance. Avoid scheduling extensive interviews. So we don't want maybe to have a client sit in there for 3 hours and we're just going over ACEs, we're going over assessment, we're doing a care plan, that is not trauma informed for me either. I mean, that's just like way too much stuff. So let's do maybe an hour, and then if it has to be 2 hours, maybe a break, a water break in between, a bathroom break. And if anything, it's a time to stretch, make small talk, establish rapport with the client at that point too. Just kind of make it a little bit easier, a little bit more relaxed. Establish a routine for safety, keeping, if at all possible, having the client come to the same place each time they come, the same office. Of course, that's not always possible, but for them to know your office, if they're your client, they know your office. Identify potential triggers, have the client write out what makes them feel safe and unsafe. What do y'all think of that? I've never done that before.
I just think thought about it.
Yeah. Might be kind of an interesting thing to do. Like you could even do it in one of the groups maybe.
Do you mind if I say something else about routine? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking of some specific things about residential or property. Is that bothering you or
Not
something?
at all, no, I love your input.
Because you couldn't come and tell me later, Marcy. But what I want us to, routine is one of the most important things for people to feel safe who have trauma. So routine and knowing kind of what to expect, right? So in a residential program, one thing that is so important that may not be as big of a deal in outpatient or programs like Plaza is consistency and routine. So if we say we're having a group this day, we have the group. If we say it's at this time, it's at this time. We have to support the routine. We have to show up for them. We have to keep that consistency. Where in other levels of care, it's not as important. That's really how people start feeling safe and comfortable in this environment.
Absolutely. Let's see. Prioritize consent. Let clients know that they don't have to answer the question if they don't want to. That is well within their rights. Keep an open mind. Avoid making assumptions or skipping questions that you think you know the answer to. This may be the first time the client has shared their story. Breaking the barrier of silence is mitigating trauma. Wow, imagine for some clients, you may be the very first person that they've told this story to. And that is the truth. Make space to relax. Use breathing exercises or mindfulness techniques to calm symptoms of trauma when they arise. Teach clients, and we're doing this with the fanny packs and all the different things, how to use these exercises on their own. And then be transparent. Explain why you're doing various measures. For example, whenever I do, well, not whenever I do assessments, but sometimes when I do assessments, I'll ask a client if they know what that is, and they'll go, they don't know. They don't know what it is. So I explain it to them and why we do it and how often we do it. And maybe they were told before, but they don't remember. But anyway, it's, again, it's just talking to the client and continuing to establish rapport. That's how we can, I feel like, establishing rapport is establishing trust, is establishing rapport, is establishing trust, talking and getting that connection, establishing that connection, and creating that feeling of collaboration, and I'm in this with you, and we're a team. Let's make this work, kind of thing. Okay, so I confess, I like Facebook, and I like the memes on Facebook too. And I found this one on Facebook. Because I know Facebook is for the older generation. But anyway, I don't do Snapchat or any of that stuff. Anyway. I thought this was really beautiful, and it reminded me of trauma information, of being trauma informed. We don't know what other people have gone through. We have to be walk gently. And so how can we walk gently in the lives of our clients? Yeah, and each other too, which I'm not talking a whole lot about today, but I know that is a big issue how we can be trauma informed with each other, and how we can be trauma informed as an agency as a whole. That's another piece that's, you know, that's a whole nother, I guess, probably a whole nother lecture or presentation, whatever you want to call what I'm doing. Okay. So I'll just go over this real quick. We're almost done, guys. We keep in mind that we're working with people first and foremost and not disorders. So for example, would we say, we wouldn't say Sam is schizoaffective, would we? We wouldn't say Sam is schizoaffective because he's a person. Sam is a person that has schizoaffective disorder. Okay, yeah. So even if we say that kind of thing to each other, it's establishing a culture that, you know, isn't trauma informed, because that's, you know, I'll use sort of an example of my own for myself that's been interesting for me, which is the pronoun thing. As somebody who did not grow up with a variety of pronouns, which I think is awesome. I'm sure I would have been a they, them. I'm sure that would have been part of my identity, you know, for several years. But anyway, yeah, so that's been an adjustment for me, and I've had to learn how to use those pronouns, and I've been corrected. Marcy's corrected me, and I've appreciated it, you know. Yeah, you've held me accountable a couple of times. And that's trauma informed for me. You know, I am learning a new way of speaking, a new language. And that's kind of what this is too. This is a new way of speaking. And so we are learning that, and we are helping each other learn that. We're in this together to help each other learn how to learn this new language, and how to be nonviolent in our language, and how to be inclusive in our language, and how to be kind in our language, because language matters. That's all we've got, really. I mean, we've got, you know, we've got the nonverbal stuff, but the language really does matter. So the other thing is just a couple of things I heard. Well, I don't need to go into that because I think I've made enough of a point with that. So I'm not going to talk anymore about that. I think we understand. We don't want to create an us and them culture. We just want to be inclusive. I heard I'll say this then. I heard someone say, so the question would be, are we taking our client for a walk, or are we taking our client for a walk, or are we going for a walk with our client? I heard somebody say, I'm taking so-and-so for a walk. And that struck me as odd, you know, because if I were going on a walk with a client, I'm pretty sure I would say, I'm taking Susan on a walk. No, I would say I'm going on a walk with Susan. It seems kind of trivial in a way, I guess, but to me, it sort of sounded like she was going to walk the client on a leash. I don't know. That's just how it sounded to me. I'm taking so-and-so on a walk. But that might just be my own crazy brain.
I think it's important for us to share like how we're hearing those things. I know you'll probably talk more about this, but I think it's okay. Like you said, I held you accountable, and sometimes, well, Justin's recently held me accountable around pronouns as well, right? So, and I've had some other people hold me accountable. So I think if we can and we're using that as our example right now, but in all of this language, person first, and all of these things, how it's okay to hold each other accountable, right? It's okay. We're not trying to find each other making mistakes. We're trying to support each other and maybe seeing things differently or being mindful of our language, you know?
Yeah. And that would be for Shift Notes as well. Let's try to be as mindful and accountable and trauma informed in our Shift Notes too. And you know, it makes it easier to read the Shift Notes when we write like that. You know, you become more specific and a little bit more professional and a little bit more objective.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think probably a good approach to shift notes is, I know that the clients won't read it and it's not designed that they ever read it, but write it in a way that if they read it, like they wouldn't, that would instantly ruin your relationship with them.
I agree.
I think every note we do in Smart Care and ship them should be read as if the client was sitting next to it.
Yes, technically, that is their health information. If they wanted to
Uh-huh.
request that, they could get it.
And I had a client recently do that, and some of the staff were losing their minds on what their notes said. So it was a good learning experience for people.
Can I make something share about this?
Yeah.
So I used to do a lot of work in production for reviews. And, kind of in relation to what you're saying here, so the culture that we'll say like drug addicts or like hotheads, that like minimizes them. It's like a person who uses drugs.
Mhm.
Like, so that's something that we were taught was like, and I've always thought that that was weird too, because like minimizes this person as far more than
Right.
so let that fit in, because substance use is obviously traumatic too, it can, so,
Mm-hmm.
that can go somewhere with that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a real stigma there. And I just was kind of playing around. It's like if someone has a sore throat, you don't say like Jane. Jane is not sore throat. Jane is sore throat. Jane has a sore throat. It's kind of silly to do it with something like that, you know. All right. Okay. This is the second to last slide, and the last slide is really good. So this is from something called In Their Own Words. It's community re-traumatization. So it's how people in the community have been re-traumatized by agencies. And it was compiled by this lady named Anna Jennings. And it isn't about what's wrong with you. It's about what happened to you. That's like the most it's like a trauma-informed catchphrase. It isn't about what's wrong with you. It's about what happened to you. So some of the things that are problematic, protocols that make no sense and rules that are made and changed arbitrarily by provider. So as we go through this, just kind of keep a mental note of these. And then when you're watching the next, it's a clip. When you're watching the next clip, see if you can recognize some of these in that clip. Distancing and objectifying replicates the original abuse, prevents a healing relationship. Not having opportunities to be productive or help others tears down self-esteem. Using a diagnosis as labeling, shames, and stigmatizes, replicates abuse. Power and control. Professionals who have not dealt with their own abuse or trauma can be hurtful to the client. They might, try and get their own needs met through the client. That's not okay. Environmental insults and insensitivities reconvey messages of worthlessness and inferiority. Repression of emotion hinders recovery and replicates the abuse mandate of silence. That's kind of a hard one. When people get very loud and begin to emote and have big emotions and stuff, it kind of gets scary, and we have to figure out, where the line is. And but part of recovery is that. Okay. I want you to consider these things as you watch this clip from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a Jack Nicholson film made in 1975. Who's heard of this movie? Y'all all have, pretty much, except for 2 people. Okay, this is just a clip. It's not the whole movie. Here we go. Wait. Such a mean lady.
She's like that. If you want to do what is trauma informed, you just do the opposite of everything she does,
Yeah.
right?
And her name is Nurse Ratchet.
I don't think the APRN should be doing group therapy. I think that's against her license.
So it's historically super common for nurses to have that role, especially in psych hospitals. Actually, in inpatient psych hospitals, they still do a lot.
Really?
Yeah, this was he ends up getting a lobotomy. It's awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. Spoiler.
I'm sure it is awesome.
I'm so sorry. I honestly
I honestly don't care about spoilers.
it's a really Jack Nicholson is brilliant, and it's just like such a great movie, and I want to see it all over again now too, because I didn't actually even remember that part. Did you remember that part? I didn't remember that part. My father took me to see that when I was like in the 5th grade. It totally traumatized me.
You can do the lighter version of that, which is the Dream Team. Right? Have you seen that? It's like the diet version of this show.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
little funnier, a little later, but it's like
Really? I'll have to see that. Yeah. Nurse Ratchet like just tears these people down to nothing. It's just horrible. Parts of it are funny, but the humor's pretty dark. So
Oh
With Sarah Paulson.
I put to be continued because this is an ongoing thing, right? Like ongoing trainings and it just kind of look like, to be continued. Okay, I wonder what we're going to be learning now. Any questions?
yeah. Thank you for so much time trying to pick something out. Thank you. for
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
That's
Yes.
awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Are you both like putting this on like case manager stuff?
Do you want now?
It's gonna be,
Okay, like trainings.
it's recorded.
Oh, wait, we should stop. It's nice.
Oh, yeah. What do we do?
PowerPoint.
No, I
Oh, it's recorded. You can just show
No,
them.
I want you in person. That's for Becca.
Okay, well. I'm really glad that's over with, y'all. I was very nervous.
Did great.
Thank